Kind of gonna be that way for a while.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll get through this. But
You're not supposed to let her know that it rocked your world. When she asks how, it was great, no problem.
nothing.
Right.
They're wrong.
Yeah, nothing at all. Right? Like, look at you guys. She'll see right through me. She sees like right through my. One of my like good things about politics, and people tell me like, oh, well, you seem more sincere than a lot of electeds. Like, yeah, because I have a wife who sees right through me. Right? Like, you gotta be really sincere. Where I'll just have to tell her, like, things aren't good. AJ threw his laptop. But
It's a mom-wife superpower, Mr. Mayor.
it's what?
That's a mom-wife superpower.
Yeah, my superpowers are limited in comparison. I can sneak behind my first graders on remote learning and do like a silly dad dance and watch him like rush to shut off his camera. That's like the extent of my powers as dad, is like messing with the kids. And
Those are good powers to have too.
yeah. Or you see him, and he's getting good at it too. He's just click, 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 boom, camera's off. Like, anyways, all right. So we'll give it another 2 minutes. It gives us about 5 minutes after. It's when we start. We'll try to be obviously respectful of everyone's time. We normally do about an hour. We got not a long agenda today, which is great, and so we probably keep it under an hour. Of course, we try to keep it under an hour. We usually go about 15, 20 minutes over for those folks who have to jump off. No big deal. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We're going to continue our discussion. We chatted last week about really commercial lending and leasing. A lot of our small businesses have are looking. If credit dries up, small businesses particularly are going to have a problem paying their rent, paying their leases, and that's one of our concerns moving forward is keeping our small business open. On my Harvard Zoom mayor training classes, they talked about how a couple weeks ago they talked about how like when you write that check, when small businesses write that check for rent, that's when they're deciding to stay open. It's usually right around then, right? So what can we do to try to work with lenders or work with landlords and figure out how we're going to get through this? So we invited Jeff Lawrence on, who's going to talk after we approve the minutes, to talk to us about commercial leases and possible relief and what's out there and what isn't. Jeff will introduce himself. He's incredibly impressive, absolutely a rock star, and he's a friend of mine.
You said that just the way I asked.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. You did it perfectly.
Yes. The so we'll get to that, and like I said, I think we're 5 minutes beyond, so let's go ahead and approve the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any questions or anything?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. So I'll make a motion to accept the minutes. Technically, it needs to be seconded. Is who wants to second?
I second.
Second it. All in favor of passing the minutes as they are, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Sweet. Minutes are passed. By the way, I wish council meetings went like this. We're a lot less fun in our council meetings than we are in these meetings. Okay. So with that, we can shift over to Jeff Lawrence. In the interest of time, I won't say anything more that is hilarious about Jeff. All right. J-Lo, by the way, he calls himself J-Lo. Everyone calls him J-Lo. So
I do not call myself J-Lo.
everyone calls him J-Lo. They know him as J-Lo, which is amazing. Just in case anyone asks about J-Lo, they're talking about Mr. Lawrence.
It's kind of funny every time. Guys, thanks for having me. Hopefully I can contribute something to your meeting today. I work for Jeff Lang. Jeff is a serial entrepreneur. We got about 24 companies under the Lang umbrella at this point, and I try to bird dog deals for as many of them as I can. Pretty substantial commercial and residential real estate holdings. I made some notes for you guys that just kind of how we have approached tenant and lender relationships at the onset of COVID and quarantine, and all of the craziness that comes with that. Um, I'm just going to read through the notes I've prepared here. And if you've got a question or whatever, don't be afraid to speak up. I'd be happy to stop and answer your question. Um, so from the beginning, right as the world was kind of shutting down and everyone was freaking out, we were all trying to move into quarantine. Um, Organizationally, as a landlord, we really got proactive in reaching out to our commercial tenants and our lenders. Uh, I think as a tenant, it's easy to forget that the landlord's got bills to pay too. So we were communicating very proactively with both our tenants and our lenders. Hey, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What kind of issues are you having on your end? Let's keep talking, keep comparing notes. Maybe we can get ahead of the next crisis. So anyway, we were very, we tried to get in front of that as much as we could. We've got really good banking relationships. We try to only do business with the good bankers, and they're not all amazing. We're very fortunate that we've had really good banking relationships, and we work really hard at maintaining those relationships. But it doesn't always go the way you want it to. Early on, we noticed that our best banking relationships were really adhering to the government mandated deferrals, and that made life a lot easier for us, and ultimately it made life easier for our tenants. We had one large tenant on one of our properties that we just they're a pretty important tenant in this particular property. We just waived April's rent for those guys. Hey, don't worry about us this month. Focus on your business, focus on your employees. We'll talk again next month, but don't worry about this month. And it is different for all your tenants. You want to treat them all the same or equally, or create the same opportunities for all of them, but it doesn't always shake out that way. So in most cases, we asked tenants who were asking us for deferrals to cover the principal on our loan payment for the property as it applies to their space. Some of our banks did allow zero payments for a short time with a prepayment plan in place for the same year, so for 2020. So if a couple folks needed to basically skip a couple months, we worked with them, if they were able to work with us, in getting a payment plan in place to get caught up here in 2020. We very purposefully coached and worked really closely with our tenants, even to the point of kind of hand-holding and communicating with their lenders and our lenders to make sure we were taking full advantage of the opportunities the government was putting out there for us. Man, I've known several bankers that spoke of working almost consecutively for a couple of days all through the night trying to process PPP loans and really get it all in place. Man, that's what you're looking for when you want to borrow money from a bank. Well, those guys were pretty amazing. Then I've heard really bad reports from other big banks that we all know. Some of our tenants that felt like they needed rent deferrals kind of turned out that they didn't. I mean, we had a plan in place to defer several rent payments for large, publicly traded national credit tenants. And then they kind of turned around and said, guys, our business is going up for some crazy reason, so we don't need to defer our rent. We want to go ahead and pay our rent, which was obviously amazing for everyone. Kind of in the broad spectrum of our tenants, we're still working really closely with one tenant who's still kind of struggling. We don't see the horizon on that yet. We all know that the pandemic has affected different businesses in different ways. I had a friend tell me that PPP money has completely recapitalized his business, which is amazing. Others are having their best year ever. A couple of our business units are having best years ever, which is really exciting. Um, so we just try to really work with our tenants. I mean, if you're a landlord, getting somebody in your space is a pretty big deal. Um, so it's advantageous to work with those tenants when they're running into troubles. You can't over communicate, um, even on the residential side. So we've had on the residential side, which is really interesting, we've had just minimal requests for rent deferrals, under 5%. Um, Most folks really prioritized getting rent paid on an apartment or a house that they're renting from us. That's the gist of my notes, guys. Overall, it's worked out pretty well from us, but we set out early on to make it work well for our lenders and our tenants, and I feel like that's really benefited everyone involved.
So Jeff, just to you bring up some ideas here or some thoughts here, I guess, for some small businesses who might be in that situation where, the rent isn't, they might go under if they have to pay full rent. You said that you went to some of your tenants, or the company went to the tenants and said, pay the principal instead of the full rent. That's an interesting idea. So pretty much what you're saying, instead of paying the full rent, pretty much make it so the landlord isn't losing money on it for a couple months. Is that something you'd recommend small businesses, if they're in a situation, instead of going late, communicating and possibly trying to negotiate, hey, can I just pay pretty much so you don't make a loss on this?
It's really dependent on the tenant's relationship with the landlord and vice versa. We're big believers in almost over communicating. And then with the lending institution too. So when we were able to do that, hey, you just pay your principal. We had coordinated that already with our lender. And we've got different lenders for different properties. Different banks have different comfort zones that they like to play in. And so we kind of use them all, or not literally, but we use a lot of them for different projects. But if you're a tenant and you see trouble coming, if you got a good relationship with that landlord, start communicating. Hey, I'm not in trouble yet, but here's what I see. Can we start a discussion on options? How is your bank feeling about what's going on, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord? I'm okay now, but let's start that discussion and maybe have a plan in place.
So, and just, I guess, you just, my next thing was about communication. I guess a big part of what you just talked about was stressing communication. With defer on people in the, I guess, the landlord business, are they, when you look for defer, are they deferring like full months payments until like the end of, pretty much the end of the contract, or is it more like we'll defer this payment and then once the new year comes or things get better, we'll add parts of that payment onto your next payment? Like, how's the defer process?
It's really situational.
Okay.
We try to kind of cater that to the tenant. I mean, you can't do it 100 different ways, obviously, but it really depends on the level of communication you get from the tenant too. That's pretty important. Even on the residential side, there's been a number of instances when I was managing all of Jeff's properties. If somebody's reaching out telling you they've got a trouble or they're having an issue and they're worried about paying rent this month for whatever reason, if they're communicating with you and telling you ahead of time, that's a big deal, rather than when they're 120 days down the road from not paying. So as a landlord, if you do it right, you put a lot of due diligence effort into getting the right tenant for your space or for your home or whatever. And you want to work with them. You don't want to kick people out, because that creates a whole lot more work for you. So if you can kick those payments down the road a little bit, or spread them out, or break them up, or whatever, it's advantageous as a landlord to do that. You keep your tenant, they're going to make it up. So if you can spread that out and keep them in your space, that's a win-win for everybody.
Okay, we got a question here. I'm not sure. Again, these are all open meetings, so I'm not sure if how deep you can get into, I think, some of the names here. But the questions from Andrew, it's do you know any real estate companies like yours that receive PPP or EIDL loan money from the government?
So we're kind of different. I mean, we're not just a standalone real estate company. I mean, the real estate company is its own entity, but it's connected in a lot of ways to all these other companies under the Lang umbrella. And we really try to drive that interconnectivity between all of these companies. So, that's not a question I've asked of my other friends that are in real estate, Andrew. Hi, by the way. Nice to see you here. It's been a while since we spoke last. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I've talked to a lot of people. Almost everyone I know has applied for PPP money. I know of companies that use PPP money to pay bonuses to their employees. I mean, you want to keep your people in good shape and engaged, and that's pretty amazing way to utilize those funds.
But if I could preface the reason I asked, and that's because I got several emails, and I think we all received emails around the clock, around this group, wondering if if they'd received, like, if they're asking for help from their landlords, but wondering if their landlords got help for their business as well. And it was hard to find that information. I personally know that mine did because he told me. I'm just curious what other people's experience was, because we're all asked, to do our best to pay people on time. We're wondering, like, when the whole world is slowed down, does everybody slow down? Some people are, being forced to pay, and others aren't. It's just kind of weird. So just curious.
I'm sorry, Andrew. I don't have a good answer for you there. I just don't know.
So I think, and I would have to look into this, I think that some of that might be public information. And I only say that because I remember talking to a reporter about bars closing down early and how, they were very upset with having to close down early, which I get, but it was, it's COVID stuff, right? Like, so it's this interesting story that they were working on. And the reporter made a comment that a lot of the places that they had a list of the places that receive PP&E money, and that somehow, that comment made me think that it must be something public. Like, I doubt that it was, if they have that information, there must be some database somewhere, but that's just, I can't confirm
I think it's
that.
150 app, right?
I put a link in there for you guys.
Oh.
Yeah.
The problem is that you can go look at the federalpay.org and see who got it. The problem is you don't necessarily know who the company is that the property's under. Cause, like, I'm not picking on Jeff, like my business partner, they own 100 companies probably, something like that. So it's just like, you don't really know who's actually on the note. So it's hard to see,
A good point.
So you can use the Secretary of State website and do a business entity search to find out whose names are on whatever LLC owns certain real estate. If you really need to track that down, that's how I do it.
To the group, I would just say, if you can figure this information out, or if you just don't, just flat out ask them, point blank. I don't think anybody's ever told me they didn't get the money when they did. We all did if we applied for it, or we didn't. We know some of our friends didn't, but ask, and then use that as leverage to have the conversation. Hey, if you got help for when people couldn't pay rent, I'm one of those people. Can we work out something? And it worked really well for us.
So other questions or discussion with Jeff? All right. If not, we'll wrap up the section with Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Appreciate the inside information on, from someone who actually works for a company that has big commercial real estate. It's good for us to know what what your companies are doing. So I think it gives us that kind of inside knowledge that small businesses we would need to move forward and get us through this. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and happy to help, and you guys have a great day.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks.
Next, we're going to get into updates on federal relief from our good friend Wayne Bell, who has daily conversations with President Trump and learns exactly what's happening every single day from the feds. and therefore the floor is now diverted to Mr. Bell.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to share just a little bit. Unfortunately, at the moment, there are no additional resources available by way of recent legislation. We are under, for everyone's information, the president did sign a continuing resolution that funded the government through December 11th. And initially, it's interesting, but in the process, initially there were provisions in the legislation or in the continuing resolution to extend extend incentives such as the debt relief that the SBA had, as well as another round of PPP, but those things were removed from the continuing resolution. And I believe there's ongoing negotiation on the next round of stimulus, for small businesses. So at the moment, what we have in terms of federal resources, we still have the EIDLE program, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan that you were just talking about. So that is still available to businesses who've been affected by COVID. And we have our normal programming. Certainly, if a borrower is creditworthy and meets all of the lender's criteria, you can continue to obtain an SBA loan. So we're certainly open for business. But I would anticipate, as the legislative process plays out, I would anticipate some additional resources, perhaps within the next 30 days. So I'll pause there. I don't have any information on the Spark funding. I know that all of the applications are closed, and I don't know if anyone is on the line from the Kansas Department of Commerce, but to my knowledge, they are no longer accepting applications.
Okay. Did anybody hear back either from the county or from the state yet on their Sparks? But I know that some people in this group applied, so it'd be nice if someone heard back. I mean, give us kind of an indication on how fast they're moving. Brooke, you just came back on, so do you got any updates for us?
We've heard back from the state, and that's moving. Okay. So that funding is moving. So we should be getting that soon. The county, we've gotten questions from, so follow-ups.
Interesting.
And
the county
seems
also,
like that's lagging, but.
Well, the county also just, and I don't feel bad telling everyone this because it was reported in the paper, their manager over there came down with COVID, along with a bunch of other.
Their what?
The county manager over the county has COVID right now.
Oh, okay.
COVID. They had, I think they reported at least 3 staff folks over there with COVID, and according to the Eagle, and we kind of got word before then because medical we weren't talking about it, of course. But there's reason to believe that there might be a bit of a slowdown over there. I'm not sure how involved the manager is with the people who did come down with COVID are in processing that, but or if it got out to any other departments who would be processing that stuff. But and he was on a few days ago. He was on a Zoom call with me and a bunch of other folks. So he's still working. So that's I'm just giving that little tidbit of information in case if it seems like they're might be late on something. It might have something to do with it. But
yeah, they've been communicative. They've been sending emails with questions. So, but
okay. So,
but I'm not sure where we're at with all that.
They address it. Dear Brooke Russell, if that is your real name, prove to us that you're from Wichita, not Moscow. Yeah. That sounds about right. All right. So
this is Felicia. I do know that more people applied for the state grant than there was enough funds to go around for everyone. Because I've heard from some people already that received the email stating that they didn't get, everything was first come, first serve. So if they were a smaller business that didn't have like an in-house accounting team to get all of the stuff together that they thought they were going to need, and it took them a little bit longer. I know that they do not have enough funds for all the people that have applied.
I hate that. Like, that's why, you know, I feel like personally that's a bit of a failure. I remember talking about this at a press conference, getting some background info, saying like in 10 days, like it's open now, it's going to be due in 10 days. Small businesses, please look into this. And the reality is like no one watches my press conferences on like Thursdays at 11 o'clock, right? Like, so like we got to do a better job, I think, as a city, but also possibly even as a community, business community, getting that info out, because I don't have a list. I don't have a database. I can't send everyone a letter. So it's
Yeah, a lot of
it
small
wasn't-
businesses don't even know.
right.
They don't even know where to look for some of that stuff because, you know, in our industry, I know I've had a lot of people ask me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I sent this out. You know, you must not have seen the message. So I'm curious if they're going to release any data that shows how the money through the state was dispersed via industry, like if they're going to show any kind of percentages of which industry received the most help.
Adam, were you jumping in on that? Like I saw your box light up.
Yeah, sorry.
Very good.
There was a couple thousand, I believe, businesses that didn't get funded. So I don't know if it was necessarily that not enough people applied. It's that they ran out of money real quick. And in this phase 3, there's no additional money to business. It's all going towards childcare and testing and other things. There's a small reserve left for business that they're not tapping until they see how that plays out with the childcare money and the testing money and other medical focused expenses. But it looks like there's nothing really more for businesses at this point. And it was just so underfunded that's really why so many people didn't get funded, is that the money just ran out real quick.
Right. That's what I had heard too, that there just was not enough money for the amount of people that had applied.
Yeah. A lot of people applied. The word was out. It was not enough money.
Okay. I mean, that's just, yeah, I mean, resources versus need, right? Like, I don't know. Still makes me wish we weren't going through this. I'll just say that. Okay. Other thoughts on kind of the federal stuff or the stuff coming from the state or even county? Any more discussion on this? I do want to just mention to our small business community. So I'm looking at this as a mayor from two different like pillars, right, for our economy. There's the business side, which is small business, you guys getting the stuff out, information out there, getting networks put together so that we can talk about this information and get us through it. But then also the employee side, like the people who are laid off, the people who have less shifts now, the people who are underemployed. So I want to just kind of get this information out that Sally, over in our housing department, there are a number of programs that are designed to help people right now who are affected by COVID. And it's tough for us to get the word out on all those programs because a lot of times we get people who have applied for like Section 8 before, who actually have applied for programs or for assistance. And those folks usually, it's easy to kind of tell them about other programs. But then you have people who, particularly in this situation, who might never have applied for any type of help from government assistance at all, right? And because it's such a unique economic crisis, they might not know they qualify for, we have like rent assistance. We have assistance for if you're late on your utility bill. Pretty much like if you show that COVID is the reason why you aren't working like you used to work, you qualify for like a number of programs that are designed to help us get through the next few months, really. So please let employees know, or people who you might be friends with know that if they're in a situation like this, then there are some resources available. Also, for people who are looking for part-time work or even retraining or even full-time work, the Workforce Alliance, I've been working with Jim Loyne over at Workforce Alliance to try to get the word out that I mean, he has right now, I think about 3,000 jobs that need to be filled. And there's, temporary work coming up, seasonal stuff for folks who might be out of work for the next few months, working with like UPS, this is gonna be the big season for gifts and stuff going out, or packages. So there's stuff out there. I'm just not sure everyone knows where to look. So like Workforce Alliance is really a good place to do that. And I told a story at my presser about my dad getting laid off after like 30 years working the same job, and how he didn't have a clue how to apply he's a carpenter. He didn't have a clue how to apply to work at the hardware, to work at HD, right? Like Home Depot. Be a dream job for him. And also like, it's inside, it's not cold, and he's an expert on all the topics there. But he doesn't know how to use a computer and go and apply for, he's the guy who drives around, looks for the help wanted sign. Like no one does that anymore. So, but my dad also said work smarter instead of harder. Using Jim Loyne, using the Workforce Alliance, that's working smarter. That's using your tools smarter. So I think that's really important for us, particularly those who might have employees who are underemployed right now, or and we're all some of the generation where our friends that we're all still working. We have a lot of friends who are retired because we're all in the workforce. So even if they don't work directly for you or with you, like friends on Facebook, friends out there who we might know because we're friends with them that are struggling, let them know about our programs over at for immediate help, which is at the housing department, has stuff for immediate help, and then also for I think intermediate retraining or even temporary jobs or part-time work or even full-time work for people who want to pivot and shift careers. Workforce Alliance is doing some amazing stuff. And last thing, and before, because I'm not even on the agenda, so I'm sorry, but last thing I just want to say, I did talk with Sherry Utash over at WSU Tech, and they have programs in which they will actually pay you a stipend to go back to school. So not only is it tuition free, like you can piece together, I guess, retooling while also, working part-time to get you through the next month when things bounce back. People will be in a better position. So it's really an opportunity to use this time, not let the time use you, is kind of how I see it, right? Like, how do we get people off the sidelines, let them know that, like, we're not in a bunker right now. Like, we could use this time to kind of get ourselves in a position so when opportunity comes, we're ready. So just wanted to chat with folks about that real quick.
Hey, on real quick, Mayor, on the federal level, something I wanted to touch on real quick is the House did pass the Heroes 2 Act last night after negotiations between Pelosi and Mnuchin fell through. So they passed a Democrat-only bill. It actually does include extensions on PUA. It includes more funding for states and local governments. It includes funding for restaurants. It includes funding for music venues. It's actually a really good bill. It's 2.2 trillion. It's down from 3.4 trillion that the original Heroes Act was. But the White House, their last offer was 1.6 trillion, is as high as they could go. So they couldn't meet on it. So the House passed it anyway. It's going to go to the Senate. It's unlikely it's going to pass, but as small business owners on this call, please reach out to Senator Moran and Senator Roberts and, let them know that it's important that this is passed, because there is another round of PPP in it as well. So, I mean, there's funding for all of the things that we're talking about within this bill. And, it has a lot of great stuff in it. And so, it's something to at least start talking to your representatives about because, I think the whole country needs relief right now. So, and there's a bill up that is that. So we also heard, same as Wayne, that negotiations are continuing a little bit, but they're also very strained. But of course, now with Trump having COVID, then who knows? Maybe something else crazy is going to happen. So, but anyway, there is a bill, Heroes 2, 2.2 trillion. It includes funding for everything we've discussed. And it's actually a really comprehensive, solid bill that would help everybody on this call.
So just a briefing about the legislative process. And Washington, D.C. is its own beast. And I never worked at Washington. But I'll tell you from the legislative environment, if a bill passes one chamber, it might not pass the next chamber, but one kind of like it can pass. And then they go, if there are two bills that kind of do roughly the same thing, they can go to what's called like conference committee. And conference committee is where pretty much I want to say like the smart people, everyone's smart, right? But the people, conference committee isn't the full body. It's usually like the chair, the vice chair, the ranking member from each chamber coming in, and they hammer out a deal. So there's a chance if this is getting movement, like some stuff is going to pass from a Democratic House that just isn't going to get any traction at all in the Senate, right? Just because of partisanship. However, something like this might get some traction if they pass their version of it and then they decide, hey, these are conferenceable. Then we might see some movement that could get something out. So if they're at 2.2 trillion, if the White House is at 1.6 trillion, there's a chance, unless people are posturing, we might get something. So that makes me feel a little more hopeful because it sounds like the Democrats came down, which means they're trying to meet more, which means that like there might actually be negotiation. So there's really two types of bills that pass through legislative bodies. There's I almost put the wrong finger down first. There's the policy, there's the policy bills, which you're going to see movement. And then there's the political bills, where both sides wind up digging their heels in, and they're passed out to, I guess, show more of a position or posture than the reality that's going to get passed. That'll make it through the process. So if my spider instincts right now are telling me that like there might be some more movement with this, let's see what happens. But I don't know, Adam's the guy who's talking to DC, so I'm glad he's on the call to kind of give us that update. So hopefully we see some more movement.
Yeah, we're definitely hoping it's not posturing, but nobody can really tell right now. It's like it's so back and forth, and it's so politicized with RGB passing away and the Supreme Court up for grabs. So I mean, we don't know, but we do know that if we reach out to our senators and let them know our story, that hopefully that helps push them to exactly what you said, Mayor, that they'll maybe push something out in the Senate that's closer to the 2.2 mark, and there's a middle ground that they can reach. So if everybody on this call and anybody listening, please reach out to Senator Moran and Roberts and let them know that you need a deal. We just need a deal, a relief deal. So
yeah, and Moran's office is pretty good at communicating. So if you call Moran's local office as well, I think, I forget the guy's name, I should know. I think it's Mark.
Mike Zamarella.
Okay, yeah.
Mike Zamersla.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. Yeah. But like there's they're pretty connected still, right? Like not the same type of folks who go to DC and you never hear from them. So reaching out to them is worth it for sure. I agree with Adam. All right, so
I have a question. Does anyone know if in that, I don't know if a while back anyone had read, they said in one of those stimulus packages, there had been word about talking to commercial lenders who did receive the PPP, trickling that down to their tenants, because I do know some people, some small businesses that had told me they know that their commercial lender that they leased from received the PPP, but was not trickling that down, not using it at all to help their renters at all. So I know at one point they had talked about putting that in one of those packages, and I didn't know if anybody had heard if that moved into that one or if it just kind of died.
It's my understanding that Heroes 2 has an eviction freeze in it, so you can't be evicted. I'm not sure about the passing down of PPP. As you heard Jeff say, that a lot of businesses that don't need it are just getting it and then giving people bonuses with it. So it's a slippery slope with that. I know that I'm like, and I'd have to go back and look and check. I've been reading so many bills, but I'm like 99% sure that in Heroes 2 there was at least a freeze on evictions, and I think it was at least for six to 12 months. But I can't.
I think what a lot of the people are worried about though is even if they have, because I know two small businesses that have said, okay, let's say this eviction part is in place, then I still have to worry about
Back
still
paying
coming
that,
up
yeah.
with that back money. Yeah, the back
Yep.
pay, where, for instance, you know, like when everybody applied for the state grant, the question was, has your business lost 25% of its revenue? Well, if you were a business like ours that was closed 100% and couldn't do anything, you lost 100% of your revenue for almost 9 weeks. So, you know, some of those people are like, this is great, but how am I going to pay this back money eventually when some places like ours in particular, I know in our industry, some people are not able to see as many clients as they have in the past because you've had to put more time between clients in order to properly disinfect even more than what we normally have in the past. So I know that's a stress for a lot of business, at least in our industry. I don't know if Janelle, if you've heard anything like that as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have. But I have been just extending my days and trying to make it up. I think as
I
a
think
whole,
that's what a lot of
I'm
people
down. I'm down maybe 10% for the year. So I'm hoping I can make that up in the last quarter, but we'll see.
I know. I think a lot of us are fingers crossed on that for sure.
But I think people aren't traveling, and so they're coming in and taking advantages of our services a little bit more. So, but really to make up my loss, I have to work longer work weeks.
Right.
So that's how I've been compensating. So I'm in a position where I can do that, but I know other businesses are not.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing from other people as well, especially people that have employees that, you know, then if they're working more than 40 hours, then that goes into overtime, which is a whole nother issue. So I know it's different for different people.
So let's jump into our next discussion about, because I think touching on pretty much how to blossom your business during COVID, I think we're somewhat getting into that conversation about working longer hours so you can space people out so they're more safe. My wife and I went out for dinner for the first time in like months, and I remember saying, "What's COVID safe? Like, who's taking this seriously enough where we feel safe going out? Who has an outdoor venue?" And we wound up going to a restaurant that had like a heated outdoor patio, and where we knew that the people wore masks and did social distancing because we want to stay safe. I think I said this in the last, and then we'll open up to discussion on some ideas we do, but I think I said this in the last meeting as well, where some of the data coming in from, I think it was Visit Wichita, I was on a call, they had PowerPoint, where the top two, either yes, definitely, or yes, most likely, were like the answers to a survey about, are you more willing to travel to a city that has a mask ordinance? And it was overwhelming that people who are traveling would travel if they had a choice between a city or a destination that had a mask ordinance or one that didn't, they would choose the mask ordinance. And that, I think, is just more synonymous with a place where the culture is protecting people seriously. It might not just be masks, it might be also just showing that people are, trying to, I think masks are a symbol that you are trying to protect others from COVID, right? That you take it seriously. So, with that, there seems to be a desire, or at least an opportunity for businesses that during COVID that are in the service sector that are protecting others from this pretty seriously. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity there. So I just throw this out there for discussion. I'm thinking like, if only we could get like a little COVID badge or something on Facebook, right? That shows like, or some type of where, hey, this is a place that's doing stuff that is going to protect customers. If you are someone who is worried about this, you should take your business to one of these businesses. So just want to kick off that discussion of, but what else are people doing? And the discussion can also get into like working later hours to space people out. But I would love if we could figure out a way to almost brag about people or businesses that are really going above and beyond to keep their employees and keep their customers safe.
I think that would be cool. The one thing that we're super concerned about right now, things haven't been great for us, we're down quite a bit.
Mhm.
But the weather's turning now, and so everyone's going to have to be inside, and that just changes the game. And so it's only going to get worse, like way worse. So everything we've been trying to do in terms of like getting people outside, and that's all going to change. And so now we're trying to figure out, like, are air purifiers the way to go? Like, is that just for theater? Like, does that really do anything? How can we improve, the air quality inside the restaurant? How can we have a better heated patio? All those things cost a lot of money. And so it's like, is now a good time to spend any money that we have? Because for, January, February typically is a really difficult time for the service industry. And it's this year going to be extremely hard. So that's kind of what we're weighing. But I like the idea of rewarding businesses who are trying. But that effort is about to become much harder for us. And that's what we're kind of weighing right now. Not, I know that sounds, I like your positive spin on that.
Well, and I see Andrew up. I'm going to get the floor to Andrew in a second, but one of the things we should be looking at between this and next meetings, I'd love to kind of follow up, is what are businesses doing? I think some, like air purifiers, I've heard some over at Spirit when they were doing the, when we walked through, Jerry Moran and I walked through, and he had the, it was there when they were creating ventilators. Tom, the CEO over there, said something about, I don't know if it was lighting or something else. They were putting something in the air, like, that was like shocking, or
they're doing like radiation or something.
It was
like,
yeah, but it also seemed like simpler than that. It didn't seem like they had like a radiation gun or anything. It seemed like certain light bulbs were actually have like ultraviolet stuff that will actually supposedly neutralize the virus in the air. Something. I don't know. I don't know enough details to speak intelligently to it. But what I'm saying is that we could probably, if we kind of look around the next couple of weeks, figure out what are people doing that are making things safer, and then obviously bragging about it. Where
I saw some air purifiers at stores and malls, and I should have gotten pictures so I could look up brands. Because I've done like a Google search online, and I haven't really found anything commercially. I mean, I haven't looked that hard. I'm sure many people on this call have. So that would be good to put a list together, because I don't want to spend money on something that, again, is just for theater. Like, I'd like to, if we're going to spend money on an air purification system, I want it to actually make a difference.
Right. Andrew, what do you got? Oh, sorry.
Okay, so I think that thing you're talking about over at Spirit, that was like probably Clorox blowing on you, right? Just kidding. That's a joke.
I don't know if that was.
So I just wanted to share something that I heard from a friend of mine who is a food service sales rep. That we were out talking about what he sees in his restaurants that he serves. And he said there's kind of like a line from, like, I think he said Hillside and East and Ridge Road and West restaurants are just doing great. They're almost maybe 10% down, maybe they're almost back to normal. And some are making more money than they made prior. And then everything in the center part of the city is getting crushed. And so, like, I don't know what amount of air purifiers are going to make people just be downtown. Like, that's, Brooke, I mean, I'd like to hear you. I'm just thinking proximity, location is like actually with the problem right now.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't as many people who live downtown, and people want to go out to restaurants that are in a neighborhood, basically. I went to Clifton Square last night, and they were pretty busy, which is awesome. But that's the downfall. There's so many advantages to being in an entertainment district, but right now we're surrounded by bars. And so, those bars are closed, and people don't want to go to Old Town, one, because, there's a reputation in Old Town for nightlife. And so I think people are kind of staying near places near their homes, which,
Right.
There's great things about being in Old Town when Interest has shows. We're slammed. Weekends are great for us. It's the weeknights where we're like, how can we sustain this? Because people aren't going downtown.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the nightlife. I mean, not having the nightlife and the entertainment going on is killing downtown right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna,
For sure.
and just to add a spin, economically, and I'm not an economics major by any means, but I've taken some classes in it as a grad student. They talk about faith in industries and faith and how it relates to economics, where you got to have faith that what you're doing is safe. You got to have faith in where so if you go to a gym and you hear a gym has a cluster, you might now think that all gyms aren't safe. So throughout the industry, you're going to see less people paying their gym dues. One of my concerns, and we try to get ahead of this and had meetings with the bars downtown that were that I think were most vocal at not following masking orders, not following the public health orders early on, because the goal was like, how do we do this safely? And we need, pretty much the meeting was like, can we get you guys on board what can we do to get you on board so we can do it safely? And I think that some of that negative press is also part of it, where you have some owners where pictures surface online of, shoulder to shoulder, folks in there when, we've given out like 4 tickets, I think, for not wearing masks, and they've been to places that were just excessively like not going to follow ordinances. Anyways, I think that gets a reputation, and that's going to hurt the businesses that are doing it right. And I get blamed for it. That the mayor says that it's the mayor's fault because he's saying that this is dangerous. Like, well, not following the health orders are dangerous, and it's the media who's going to kind of call you out on it. But it also, when you have a concentration of I think that mindset that like, this isn't a big deal, we don't want to follow this, it creates a reputation where people like my wife and I, who, hey, where's the COVID safe areas, we might stay away from. So
has there been a cluster at a bar yet?
Yes, not at a single bar, but because you can't, so this is the problem, like you can link a cluster to a nursing home, right? Because the people are in that nursing home consistently. So the word cluster fits. Now, if you say like bars are safe because we haven't had one cluster break out from one bar, the problem with that logic is it's a false narrative, because people who go to bars hop to different bars. So if I go to Old Town and I go to 3 different bars and none of those bars are following the proper codes, then I get sick. It's not that there's one cluster where this bar is the bad bar or this bar is the one I got sick at. It's that we have this many people who got sick after reporting that they were at bars in Old Town. Then like the whole kind of sector is what winds up getting reported on to the media. So, and that's one of the things is like, I get like a bar owner who's a friend of mine who reaches out and says, you ever had a cluster at a bar? So we're not the problem. It's like, no, the medical community is saying that if bars don't try to implement measures that are going to keep people safe, then it's a place that you can catch COVID. Like it's not their fault. It's the way this disease is. It's that, we're talking about, we're talking about social distancing stuff, and bars are made to be social. So, but that's the kind of, I guess the difference is you're right. There's not a cluster that we can point to. That's the bad bar that didn't do everything, and now we're going to, but everyone else is safe. I think it's becoming more sectional.
Well, there's really just certain activities that just aren't safe to do during a pandemic, like going bar hopping or partying or going to shows, and gathering and big gatherings. So I mean, there's just certain things that aren't safe to do, and I think the public gets that for the most part, and that's probably a big reason why. Well, I mean, that's one of many reasons why we're seeing such little activity in Old Town.
Right.
But entertainment drives Old Town so much. It's our entertainment district, and without entertainment happening, that's also just crushing it as well.
But
and then I know with some things as well, it's whatever your demographic is that frequents your establishment. Some demographics are taking it more seriously than others, and so that's also going to affect business big time.
What I want to do, and I don't know how we could do this, but it's not just the bar scene, but I think some very loud actors in the media who got in the media who pretty much denied that COVID, pretty much went against the medical opinions, right? Saying like, you can't catch COVID in my place because no one has said they had that, right? Versus like activity that's unsafe. Like, how do we get a loud voice for the people who are doing it right that kind of that brings back that comfort that you can go here, here, and here. These are the people who are doing it right, who want to keep people safe. You want to go to date night, your best bet is to go to these places because these places are taking a financial hit by doing it right, but that means you're going to be safe there. I will spend more money taking my wife out to a place that is wiping down tables, wearing masks, doing social distancing, going to Leslie's Coffee, for instance, where she has a great policy to try to keep everyone safe. Like, I will spend more money going to a place like that than I would some place where the owner is online saying that COVID is fake, right? So, but the ones who are just kind of in complete denial of like their responsibility to help, I guess, eliminate some of this, to help stop spread, those are the ones that are getting all the media. Those are the ones that are getting all the press. And I think it hurts the entire industry. I think it hurts the entire service sector if the only ones who are getting attention are probably the minority of folks who are saying that, like, we shouldn't worry about COVID, like, who are kind of passing on talking points that aren't I guess sustainable. Like, so how do we also bring up the businesses and make a voice in a sector for folks who are doing it right, who are paying a price for doing it right, because they're not at full capacity. But then people who want to be cautious of this can award those businesses by going to those businesses. So that's what I'm kind of wondering, where this being creative on kind of to blossom the businesses during COVID. Like, that's what I'm hoping we can get into maybe the next week, if not a little bit on this call. I mean, we're kind of at time.
I think part of the problem, especially with nightlife specifically, is in order to do it right, you lose more money than you do if you just stay closed. So I think that's a big problem with that. And the reason those people are being so vocally against it is because they know that if they operate at anything less than a certain capacity, then they're going to lose more money than they would just closing down. And I mean, there's also an ignorance standpoint of it as well, but I don't know. I'd be totally open to hearing everybody else's opinion on it, but I know that's been my experience, is to do it right, you lose way more money, and why even do it? It's no benefit to the business at all. It's staying shut down.
So Miles, I think your mic's off. I see you talking now. Are you muted?
Can you hear me?
I don't know if we can. There you go.
All right. I think a great conduit to get out the word about the entities that are doing it right are going to be these foodie sites that are housed on Facebook. I know that there are at least 4 really good ones where thousands of people are able to weigh in on those eateries that are actually adhering to many of the city ordinances. Wichita by EB is one of the biggest food bloggers in the city of Wichita. I'm sure he'd get on board with forming a list. I mean, that guy is incredible, and I'll connect him with you later this afternoon. Yeah. And there are several other places to eat, not to eat, blogs and Facebook entities. I don't know if anyone else is on some of those Facebook groups on right now.
I didn't even think of that. I mean, so yeah, we could probably kind of, I guess, promote some of these already existing community-driven resources where people are giving reviews on places that are doing COVID policy well, and maybe. Okay.
I wonder if there's also something we could do to make eating outside more appealing to people. People are really not into it, I have found. And already, even on a day like today, where this is going to be one of the nicest days we'll probably have all year, people are so resistant. They are already complaining that it's cold. And so I definitely feel what Brooke mentioned earlier, like what happens when it gets colder. And I wonder if, everybody is just clinging to, wanting to go back to normal. And I think what we're struggling with here right now at Leslie Coffee is that most coffee shops now do have some form of indoor seating. We haven't added it back yet, but there's overwhelming pressure. I feel it from the other side, not so much people wanting to stay safe, but the people who are like, well, I can go here and go inside, and I can go here and go inside, so why can't I come here and be inside? And also just feeling like, yeah, prior to the shutdown, 75% of our business was for here, and we barely had any outdoor seating. So it's not trying to reframe it as like something cool and fun to do is go and sit outside. I don't know. That would be helpful, I think, to me, instead of it like pitching this thing that people clearly don't want, would be to say like eating outside is fun. I don't know, bring a jacket or
Right.
I don't know. People, yeah, it's just been a real struggle, and I already have a lot of people complaining about the weather, even on some of these nice days. It does make it feel like it's going to be a long winter for sure. But when you look on the CDC site, the risk of eating inside or that hasn't gone down. And I think also the idea that what happens if your staff gets sick, I mean, that's something we've talked about on this call, but it's not it might be tough to say that they got sick from working here, but I think that's like a huge concern. So I think we could promote the businesses that are doing it right, but I think more we could promote the behavior of being safe in public or eating outside as something that's actually cool and helping the community.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a mindset shift for Wichita because we haven't had that option.
Yeah, I mean, it's like telling people to park 2 blocks away and walk. Like, they don't want to do it, but is there something we could do to get people to think differently about it? I don't know. That would be a big...
I'm working on that, by the way.
Could you make it like an event, Sarah? Like, make it more of it like I don't know. It seems like people in Wichita love it when it's like framed as an event as opposed to just as a daily thing. And maybe that could help normalize it if we did some like, coffee on the patio events or some, I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out, but random stuff. I know out in like Berkeley, the UC theater out there, obviously they're shut down because they're a venue, but they started doing like a patio bar, and they did like they were having like bands live stream out onto the patio bar, but they did it as like events, like weekly events, and actually got good traction with that. I don't know if especially as it gets colder, like it seems like you almost have to like make it something that's really promoted as maybe a something like an event or some kind of special gathering or something to push it. I don't know.
Yeah, I would be happy to talk to anyone about planning any kind of event like that. I'm working on a nonprofit event that I can't really go into detail about yet, but we're gonna kind of flip the event on its side and spread it out through the city. But I think there's definitely some ways to get really creative with doing things like that and bringing in performers without having them there live and doing things like that. So if anyone is interested in something like that, I'd be more than happy to help.
So just, I know we're running low on time, but I just want to kind of point out, I was talking to, I think they're a reporter over at KSN. She's from Denver, and she mentioned, she described it almost like a bubble, like a snow globe type thing that people are in, but it's like vented. It's like they're outside, but they're not. But it's safer. Like I also think about like morts, right? Where morts are like, the law was like, hey, you can't be outside, you can't be inside and smoking, and they like found that gray area. Like they're pretty much a permanent outside structure without technically being one that holds heat. I mean, that was a big investment they made, don't get me wrong, but I'm wondering what, moving forward, what we can do to kind of, and what the city's role is to try to recreate some of what other places are doing to find that balance where people are comfortable being outside. I'm not gonna lie, I went home yesterday with my wife, my mom was like, wow, you guys weren't out long. I was like, yeah, I got cold, right? Like, and they had an outdoor heater. So, but also we should probably think about for next meeting, while more people are supposed to go inside, we're worried this thing's gonna bump because people will be more so inside. What are the very best practices we can have for people who will be dining inside? And some of that's going to be like, take the salt and pepper shakers off the table, right? Like no common touch areas. Like what can we be doing? And now what is the research saying that is going to be, I think, the best, safest way for people to go inside? Because we're going to see an increase in that. We'll probably see a bump in the numbers, but how can we mediate that the best? So that I think would be an interesting thing we should hit on for those in on this call. And really, I think that Jacob is normally on a call. It'd be interesting to see what the gym scene is doing, right? Like, because there's a lot of movement, a lot of stuff. We haven't seen outbreaks from gyms here. So is there like practices that they're doing, like the kind of cleaning practices and the stuff that the service sector can kind of take on as their own, like make it theirs too? So I think we could have some interesting conversation about that. Someone just said, may I suggest having someone from Kansas Restaurant and Hospitalities Association visit with us regarding National Restaurant Association suggested protocol for safety operation restaurants. It's been laid out since April. So someone already did all this. Yes. And that was from Andrew. Yeah, let's the person who's taking notes, or Janet, let's see if we can get someone from the Restaurant and Hospitality Association. That's a really good idea, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Like there might be actual policy out there. We can use our networks to get that out.
I want to throw to you real quick, if you don't mind. We've reopened our cafe indoors, and so I'm happy to share kind of like what we've experienced the last week and a half, almost 2 weeks. At some point, I know we don't have much time now, but hearing what Sarah's going through, we've been thinking about these things for the longest time as well, and now we've started to experience it. And so I'd be happy to share like kind of what we've thought about, and then also kind of like what we're still concerned about and the things that we're dealing with.
Okay, yeah, let's have a meeting about that next time around then and see what we can do as things get colder. But I agree with Sarah too. We didn't take into account what if we don't have the outdoor eating culture, right? Like, I mean, I'm from New England. Like, I'm annoyed if I can't eat outside when I'm by like a beautiful water body somewhere eating seafood or something. Like yeah, like sitting inside is what you do when you didn't arrive on time. But in Wichita, you're right, we don't have like outdoor dining. We have patios.
I will say people have been much more tolerant through the heat, which because we're used to running an outdoor venue, so like this is a problem that we kind of deal with all the time. But people have been much more tolerant this summer. But it gets really cold. It's just like, there's only so much you can really do We've talked about closing in spaces, but I'm not sure that will really help, because then you're just creating like a closed in space with vinyl and heat, and that doesn't necessarily seem like a good option either for people. So yeah, it would be good to hear from some experts and see what other people are doing around the country, because obviously there are places that are starting to experience cold weather quicker than we are. So maybe we can kind of tap into that.
Right. And good public policy is literally taking someone else's city's idea, like another city's idea, and letting them, if it's working for them, like learning from their mistakes, right? Like we there's probably some real opportunity, as Brooke just said, that we could see what other places are doing and then kind of make it a Wichita version of it and not have to go through the trial and error that other cities might have when the idea came up. So we're about 15 minutes late, which is our normal, or 12 minutes late. Is there anything else you want to kind of touch on before we get off the call? Go ahead.
This is Felicia. Can I just say, I posted a link in the chat about, I talked about this before. There's a local business that is making a system. Brooke had talked about air purifiers. Mm-hmm. Sora Systems has I'll call it an air purifier, but that's not exactly what it is. That has been proven to kill SARS and CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So if you guys look that up, it's like I said, it's a local business here, and they do residential and commercial. And what you do is, like, when you leave at night, you start it and it runs through the night, and it regulates itself because nobody should be there while it's running, but it runs through a whole system. I went and looked at the company. It actually was pretty impressive. So there's some options there if you're looking at things, because I believe it continues to kill. So you might look that up and see if that's something that might help people too, because I know we've been looking at that as well.
Yeah, and I wonder, there are temperature checkers, by the way, that don't touch people. Like the one here at City Hall, like every day when I come in, I get my temperature checked. Guy holds it up and he's just a little bit away from my forehead, it's like a gun, and he tells me my temperature. There might be, if we go inside, and I'm just literally spitballing, I do not have a clue what your guys' industry is like. Wouldn't be, but I would go to a place that does temperature checks, or almost like a smoking section, right? Like, this is the section. If you don't want to get your temperature checked, you can go in that section over there. If you do, because you're someone who is very worried about getting COVID, or maybe someone with a underlying health condition, you get temperature checked, you get to go into the section where everyone gets their temperature checked. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there where what is the least abrasive? I think that, and just also Kansas, I think it's the University of Kansas in Wichita, they're working on, I think, a saliva test that you like kind of put something on your tongue, and I think they described it like a pregnancy test. So you put it on your tongue and then you kind of like wait to see if its color changes. And that's going to be somewhat of a game changer if they come out with those, where we're going to be able to have like instant testing with folks too, which might be nice. But yeah, a lot of local stuff going on. And Felicia, you said you did put that link in there for that company?
I did put the link. Yeah, it's in there, and you guys can look at that. That machine is actually pretty impressive.
Cool. Excellent.
It's not like it's giant. It's not huge. And each machine, I think, cleans, it's either 1,200 square feet or 1,500 square feet. So depending on how big your space is, how many you would have to get. But yeah, I would look that up if I were you guys. And it's local, so that's even better.
Awesome. All right, now it really is 10:15. So we'll go ahead and continue this conversation next week and online. So, oh, sorry, I'm moving this up. All right, cool. All right, guys, so we'll go ahead and cancel. Thanks, Andrew. Good idea. We'll go ahead and close out the meeting. Thank you guys for being on, and appreciate you all giving up some time in your day. We'll talk next week or week after. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.